Bible is filled with so many beautiful stories about Jesus Christ. So take yours, please, and turn to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1. I want to read a little 3-verse vignette of one of the most precious stories in all of the New Testament, and then also flip over to Luke chapter 5. I want to read the same story, but just a part of it, when Luke gives us a little more detail than Mark includes. Mark chapter 1. Verse 40. It's a beautiful passage about how Jesus can come into our lives and touch the untouchables. A man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, "If you're willing, you can make me clean." Jesus said, filled with compassion, as he reached out his hand and he touched the man, "I'm willing, be clean." And immediately, snap your fingers quick, Mark says, the leprosy left him and he was cured. And Jesus said, now don't tell anybody, next several verses. It's called a messianic secret. We won't talk about that this morning, but don't tell anybody. He had a reason for this. But the man was so overjoyed he couldn't help himself. And he ran out and he told everybody he could find. Now look over in Luke chapter 5, verse 12. There's an interesting word that describes the advanced state of the man's case. While Jesus was in one of the towns, a man came along who was covered with leprosy. And when he saw him, he said, "Same man, if you will, you can make me clean." The word covered means it was an advanced case. See, there came, down through the grapevine, to the huts and the hovels were huddled those lepers, outcasts from society, tried somehow to scrape out a life. The news that this miracle worker was not far away. The one who could touch blind eyes, and the one who could bring sight, and the one who could take paralyzed legs and give them strength. And hope was raised up in the heart of this one leprous-filled wretch, who began to think, maybe I can just, maybe. And before you know it, he's trying. In a culture where lepers were shunned, where a leper himself had to shout by law, "Unclean, unclean." See, the only way they could handle the disease in those days was quarantine. Unclean, he would have to say about himself, "I'm unclean, I'm unclean." You think about the shame of that? "I'm unclean." And the people waters would part. Crowds would divide. As he approaches with that white, taut skin, that frothy rag over his mouth, and that raspy voice that comes from nodular leprosy as he wheezed, "Lord," now kneeling in worship at his feet, "Lord, if you will, you can make me clean." See, that's the rasp of the advanced stage. That's why we know what his voice was like. And how was it? It was the compassion of Christ. What was the look on his face? As he reached out and he touched him and said, I'm willing, be cleaned. And immediately, he was healed. Do you ever wonder how bad leprosy really is? How bad is leprosy? Well, I suppose that no disease so reduced a human being for so many years to such a hideous wreck. There are 3 types of leprosy. The first one's called nodular leprosy. Begins with little patch of maybe reddish coloring, discoloration of your skin, and soon the red begins to turn to brown. And after a while, these nodules begin to fold over. And so your whole face, your skin begins to thicken and fold. They say that oftentimes those in some of the advanced cases with nodular leprosy have their face begins to look like a lion, so disfigured and swollen. And then the nodules begin to ulcerate and bleed. And the hair falls out and the eyebrows fall out. And the worst part of it is that it begins to attack your eyelids, so that not too long after there's no eyelid and you cannot close your eyes even to sleep. Your eyes stay open all the time, no eyelid. Nodular leprosy lasts 9 years, because in 9 years you're dead. Mental decay, coma. You don't want to get that one. The second type of leprosy is called anesthetic leprosy, in which, you've heard about how they begin to lose feelings in their nerve endings. You can spill hot water on your feet and don't realize it because the nerves are dead. And the nerves in the extremities begin to die until after a while, digits begin to fall off, toes begin to fall off. And as the tendons are attacked, their hands would squeeze up like claws. Their feet would turn in like claws. 20 to 30 years before finally death ensued. The third type of leprosy is a mixture of both. And the most common form of leprosy was to have both nodular and anesthetic leprosy. And so you ask the question, how bad is leprosy? And I respond, it's really bad. You just don't want to get it. What's it like for this man to have the advanced case, to be full of leprosy, as Luke tells us? Well, there was an initial shock. There had to be an initial shock. There came the moment when he saw the red and wondered, what is this? And then it begins to turn brown, and he can't deny the fact he's got leprosy. It's kind of like when you've got some hip trouble maybe, and things aren't quite right in there, or anything else. You need a little CAT scan. Going to go and check your hip, maybe have to do surgery. And finally, 2 days later, the doctor calls with the results. Says, I got to tell you about your hip, just like we thought. The socket's not too well, and we're going to probably have to do surgery. And as he finishes, you say, well, thanks, Doc. I kind of anticipated that. I appreciate your calling. And he says, wait, there's more. More? You didn't go in for anything more. And the doc says, we think we found a cancer in there. It's not just an easy tumor type. It's that kind like a spider web that we can't touch, that just kind of weaves its way through the muscle fibers and tissues and down into the bone. And you know what it's like? Some of you have gone through this. Remember? Your cheeks flush and burn with fear because you didn't expect that. And it must have been for this man one day. You think, it could happen to any of us, but hopefully not. And then it did. He's got the red spots. And he's lost his future, hasn't he? Sure, he's lost his future. There is no future for a leper because it's incurable. You don't get well. Think of the things he lost. He lost all of his friends. So they couldn't travel freely in town. So he couldn't have any friends. They all said goodbye to him. He lost his job. He's got no visible means of support. The only way to survive was on the charity of maybe some of your family members who could eke out enough more than what they needed to survive on. They'd bring it by as a little charity move. He lost all of his health. It's gone. He lost his family, his uncles, his aunts, his cousins. He lost his religion. See, you couldn't go to church if you had leprosy because it was quarantine. And you lost your dreams. What's there to dream about? One of my children struggles with some issues revolving around bipolar chemistry. And I'll never forget, several years ago we were talking as she was trying to get squared away and balanced. And she looked up at me and we were talking about how she was dealing with some of her anger because, God, why did you let this happen to me? You got to answer that question pretty carefully. And then she said, I guess the thing that hurts the most, Dad, is I had all these dreams of things I wanted to be and things I wanted to do. And now, none of them are ever going to come true. That was really hard for a child. It's hard for a parent. She was losing her dreams. Leper lost his feelings. See, there's no feelings out there in these extremities. But not just the physical feelings, the emotional feelings. Because see, when you get this, you begin to go dead inside. Until finally you just survive by being numb. And as awful as the physical manifestation of leprosy was, there was the horror of the social manifestations. It was like, in some ways, a social disease because you're now cut off from everyone. Not just cut off, you were ridiculed and mocked and rejected. In fact, one rabbi said boastfully, I throw stones at lepers to keep them away. How would you like your pastor to say that about you? I throw stones to keep you away. It's like when so many of us pastors go to the ICU. I was in one 2 days ago, and they've got this infection. And you want to go and see your parishioner, but you're putting on all the robes and the gowns and all the stuff to protect them and you. But you go in there because they're hurting. How'd you like it if some of your religious leaders threw stones at you to keep you away? Or said things like this, I won't even go through a street and buy an egg where a leper has passed near. The ostracization was awful. And so you live a life of no friends and no job and no health and no value. And then one day he met Jesus. And everything changed. And you and I see here one of the most beautiful pictures ever presented of the Lord Jesus Christ. He's described as being as filled with compassion. And he reaches down and he touches this man, and everything changed. He was never the same again. Most excited man in all of Israel, touched by the hand of Jesus Christ. I was sitting with Julie this week. We were thinking about this sermon a little bit and chatting about the passage last Monday. And she asked me the question, who are the lepers of today? And that stunned me a minute. My immediate reaction was, well, those who have AIDS. But I got to thinking about that, because that's not good enough of an answer. You go a little bit deeper. See, we don't have leprosy in our country anymore. It's been eradicated. The last leprosarium in the U.S. was closed in Louisiana 3 years ago. We've eradicated that disease, but it still exists. It flourishes in India and China and Malaysia, and worst of all, it flourishes in Africa. Who are the lepers? Well, I got to thinking. You know, the real lepers are the ones who've lost their friends, or feel rejected, or feel ostracized. I was a camp pastor when I was in college at a children's camp one summer. And the closing day on Friday of one of the camps, I was going through the cafeteria line with one of the camp directors, and he said to me, have you spoken to that girl over there, gesturing to this young college girl who was passing out the green beans? Have you spoke to her this week? And I remember saying, no, I hadn't. And he said to me words I'll always remember. I've never forgotten this. He said to me, well, when we go through the line and she gives you the green beans, would you be sure and say something nice to her? Because she's the kind of person most people pass by. Now you imagine a girl like that's experienced some hurts. You have, haven't you? Ever been times in your life when you felt like, you know, I'm just the kind of person most people pass by? That was a leper. See, the lepers are the folks who are isolated and lonely and cast off and rejected. And some of them have become so numb from all the pain and the hurt that the emotional feelings have just stopped. And some are rather cynical because of all the times they've reached out to someone who should have reached back, but they didn't, and they've just kind of finally given up. You see, the truth is we're all lepers, aren't we? If even for a day, we're all lepers, one time or other. And some more than others. And so I think I'd answer Julie's question like this. Who are the lepers? They're the rejected, the lonely, the isolated, the hurting. Of course, the obvious ones like those with AIDS, the homeless, the jobless, the divorced, the abused children, the battered wives, the mentally ill. We're all lepers at one time or other. See, most of the lepers in Jesus' day were easy to identify by the white taut skin, the nodular folds, the raspy voice, the frothy rags over their faces. But most of the folks today aren't quite as easy to see, the lepers today. But they're there for us who have eyes to see. Joyce Landorf writes in her little book, Balcony People, please hear what I'm not saying. Please hear what I'm not saying. See, one of the things I know I've learned, and I'm sure you have too, is that when people come grieving and complaining about things, usually the first thing they talk about is not the real issue. I used to spend all my counseling time talking about the presenting issue, began to realize that's usually not the issue at all. There's stuff underneath. So she writes, please listen to what I'm not saying. Don't be fooled by me. Don't be fooled by the face I wear, for I wear a mask. I wear 1,000 masks. Masks that I'm afraid to take off, and none of them are me. Pretending is an art that's second nature with me, but don't be fooled. Please don't be fooled. I give you the impression that I'm secure, that all is sunny and unruffled with me, within as well as without, that confidence is my name, that coolness is my game, that the water's calm and I'm in command, that I need no one. But don't believe me, please. My surface may be smooth, but my surface is my mask, my ever-varying and ever-concealing mask. Beneath lies no smugness, no compliance. Beneath dwells the real me in confusion, in fear, and alone. But I don't tell you this. I don't dare tell you this. I'm afraid to. I'm afraid you'll think less of me. I'm afraid that you'll laugh, and your laugh at me would kill me. I'm afraid that deep down I really am nothing, that I really am no good, and that you'd see this, and you'd reject me. So I play my game, my desperate pretending game. A facade of assurance without, but a trembling child within. And so begins the parade of all my masks, the glistening but the empty parade of masks, and my life becomes a front. So when I'm going through my games, don't be fooled by what I'm saying. Please listen and try to hear. Hear what I'm not saying. Hear what I'd like to say, but I'm afraid to say. I dislike hiding, honestly. I dislike the superficial game that I'm playing, the superficially phony game. I'd really like to be genuine and me, but I need your help. I need to hold your hand, even though my masks would speak otherwise. You wonder who I am? You shouldn't. For I am every man and every woman who wears a mask. Please, don't be fooled by me, at least not by the face I wear. You wearing a mask? Well, sure you are. Why do you put on a mask? Because you're trying to cover something. See, we all wear masks because the truth is we're all the lepers. At one time or other, someday or other, we've all got on a mask. And there's a Lord Jesus Christ who is just waiting for the chance, if we're willing, to let him say to us, I'm willing. Be clean. Which causes me to wonder about a statement Judy made to me at breakfast last Monday morning. She just was talking, but I wrote this down. I thought, this is pretty profound. She said to me, for many of us, our pain is our leprosy. Isn't that true? Our pain is our leprosy. Which causes me to wonder as I read this passage, what made Jesus' response so radically different from all the others? See, there are a lot of folks giving a lot of responses. Religious leaders, I'm glad to throw stones at these people. Yeah, that's an awful response. Unclean, unclean, get away from these. That's a hurtful response. What made his response so radically different? And the answer is given to us very clearly. It says in Mark 1:41, he was filled with compassion. The word means he was overflowing with compassion. It means he was covered with compassion. He was moved with compassion. That may be the best translation. I wish we had an English equivalent to the Greek word. Here we try to translate with one word, compassion. It's a word that almost sounds like it feels. It's pronounced basically spalak. See the CH in Greek, the chi. Spalaknisthis. Spalaknisthis. See, what it really means in Greek, it was a graphic word like an onomatopoeia. Spalaknisthis. It's the picture of these deep feelings that arise. It would be like he was overcome with these deep, deep feelings on the inside that just kind of flushed out into the open. That's what he was filled with just before he reached out and he touched him. It's really intriguing, some of the words they used back in ancient times and some of the beliefs they had about our organs and how things worked. Like, for example, they believe that, you've heard for years, like the Bible says, out of the heart the mouth speaks. Where does that come from? They thought that the heart was the brain. Why? Well, see, they didn't know. But when you breathe in, the air went in. They thought it kind of mixed with blood around your heart. And air and thinking and speaking are so closely related because out of the heart, the mouth speaks. The air mixes with the blood in your heart. And as you speak, the air comes back up in words. And, of course, you got to think before you speak. So the logically followed. Your heart was your brain. That's where the thinking took place. They didn't know these things. They thought the organs moved around on the inside. Some folks thought there were living entities in there that moved around, like your heart. You ever heard people say, my heart was in my throat? See, they weren't kidding. They felt like their heart really moved into their throat. There's some arrhythmias you can get, for example, when you feel the blood pumping right in your throat. You think, my heart's right there. Well, no, your heart never moved, but you felt this way. Put your hand on your stomach. Put your hand on your stomach. There we go. How many of you have your hand kind of right here where I have mine, right here on my stomach? Raise your hands. That's not your stomach. Those are your intestines. This is your stomach, out here below your sternum. See, where do we get this? Well, see, back in ancient times, you eat something, you kind of get an upset stomach, and before you know it, where does it hurt? It's in your intestines. Where do you have a tummy ache? It's in your intestines. No, that's not your tummy. They thought your stomach had floated down here to your abdomen, and your stomach was now down here hurting. See, your stomach had moved. They thought these organs moved all over the place. If your spleen moved, if you were an athlete, you'd get a stitch. You ever had a stitch when you're running or something and your whole side hurt? They thought that was your spleen moving, and the best way to get that healed was to get your spleen taken out, especially if you were an Olympic athlete. And if you wanted to really run fast, you'd get your spleen out. Of course, there's no record of any Olympic athlete in Greece ever winning any kind of race, those that got this spleen surgery, because all of them died during the operation. It just didn't happen. And it's amazing how many of these things have traced down to us these days. And so when it says here, he was moved with compassion, let's not miss what's going on here. This deep sense of feeling as he saw this man begin to ooze up within him. And before you know it, he's reaching out to touch the man. Now, compassion is never compassion until it reaches out and touches someone. Julie and I have made a practice of putting a few extra dollars in our pockets, so when we see homeless folks, we go buy them a meal. One of my golf friends, Craig Brew, told me, if you ever play golf, there's always these ball boys and these bag boys, and you know, it's kind of nice to give them a tip, but it's also kind of nice to watch all the golfers dodge them so they don't have to give them a tip. And Craig said to me, if you can afford to play golf and they can't, you're better off than they are. Give them a tip. If you can afford to go to the real nice restaurant and the waiter can't, they need it more than you do. See? Give them a tip. That's an okay thing. So anyway, we pulled into McDonald's, and I saw one of the homeless guys. First time I'd seen this particular one. And he was sitting in the parking lot, where the cars can drive, in the parking lot. I said to Julie, go on inside and order for us, and I'm going to buy this guy some breakfast and lunch. And so I walked over and instead of just giving him money, I said, I want to buy you some breakfast. And I gave him $20. And he looked up with a moment of gratitude, and he said to me, do you know how hard it is to get a drink of clean water in this town? You know, I'd never thought of that in my life. You know how hard it is to get a drink of clean water in this town? And he proceeds to tell me. And the fact is, I didn't really want to know. I'd done my duty. You know, I'd given him 20 because I was moved with some compassion. And I really didn't care how you get a drink of cold water, and especially if Julie's in there waiting with me, the hot coffee and all this stuff. And he's out there engaging me in conversation that I really didn't have time for. And I listened politely for a while, and then I'm thinking, you know, this guy's got to be kind of crazy. No wonder he's out here. And I extricated myself and went on inside and had my breakfast. And about 10 minutes later, he came inside, and very coherently, very articulately, I heard him order breakfast. And you know, it's like I knew this, but bingo, he's not crazy. He's just lonely. He wanted somebody to talk to. I knew that. Brahmins taught me that. Now, I had some compassion because I had the feelings for him, and I did something about it, but I was not filled with compassion. See the difference? It's one thing to have some compassion. Now, by the way, please, if you just have the feelings, but it doesn't produce some cause of care and concern, then it's not compassion. See, just having the feelings and not acting on it to bring care and comfort is like putting your hand on your intestines and calling it your stomach. Something's just not right here. The compassion's only compassion when the movement produces care. See, I had some compassion. And maybe one day I'll get filled with compassion. See, Jesus was. See, I guess if Jesus had been in the parking lot, he probably would have gone over and touched the guy. Oh, he had an ulcer on his heel that was, 4 inches in diameter. Jesus would have gone over and probably sat beside him, maybe even taken him home, and cleaned him up. Of course, if he was Jesus, he just would have done it, in an instant. And maybe one day, this is not easy. Maybe someday I'll really be filled with compassion. Not sure I've ever really done that. But Jesus did. Totally filled. You can read these next words from two perspectives. You can read it from the Christian perspective, who's been a Christian and not living out compassion and feel kind of guilty. And there's a lesson here there. But you can also read these words like you perhaps never had, but you read it from the leper's perspective and realize every one of us is a leper. Listen to this. I was hungry and you formed a humanities club to discuss my hunger. So you can be a Christian and read this and feel really guilty because that's what you did. But let's look at it a little differently. Instead of putting a guilt trip on us, why don't we put it in these terms? Have you ever been hungry emotionally and nobody cared? But I'll pray for you, brother. You ever felt that way? See this perspective? I was imprisoned and you crept off quietly to your chapel to pray for my release. See the perspective? You're the leper. You ever been in bondage and people said, I'll pray for you, brother. Good luck. I was naked and in your mind and you debated the morality of my appearance. I was sick and you knelt down and thanked God for your good health. See, as a Christian, I can feel guilty about that, and I want to feel convicted about that. But let's flip it around this time. I was homeless and you preached to me of the shelter of the love of God. You ever felt that way? Isolated and alone, no place to go, and somebody says, God bless you. I was lonely and you left me alone to pray for me. Wouldn't that sting if you were a leper? I was lonely, so you said, I'll go pray for you. Why didn't you stay with me? You felt that. You seem so holy, so close to God, but I'm still very hungry, very lonely, very cold, and still in pain. See, some of us have lived that out, haven't we? We really wanted that person to come in, but they didn't. Maybe they passed by and spoke a word, but they left. Who can you trust with your leprosy? Who might that be? See, somehow or other, the very essence of our Christianity is not just to touch the untouchables and to heal the unhealables and to forgive the unforgivables. The very essence of Christianity is when I, the untouchable, is touched. When I, the guilty, receive forgiveness. When I, the lonely, receive attention. And a lot of us have experienced that, haven't we? That's why you're here. You've come in these doors, or back when you found Christ, you came as a leper, and very gently and very caringly and very lovingly, there were people who reached out and held your hand. You see, the fascinating thing here is that Jesus touched him. You know, there's lots of ways to heal, I suppose. He could have said, be cleaned. Would have done it. Could have stepped back 5 feet. Be healed. Would have done it. Sometimes, though, he put mud, spittle, and got some dirt and made mud. He'd put it on the blind eyes. He could have done that with this guy, I suppose, but instead, he reaches out and he touched him. And that touch spoke volumes. You know, there are lepers in this room you haven't been touched in years, have you? And that really hurts, doesn't it? Who would you trust with your leprosy? How many of you have been to Maui? Good place, isn't it? How many of you have been to Molokai? Not near as many. It's the leper isle. It's where in the 19th century the lepers were placed because it was quarantined. Joseph Damien came to work in the Hawaiian Islands. He heard about Molokai, and so he couldn't resist. He went to Molokai, and for the next 16 years, he rebuilt their houses. He built better water systems. He built them a church, and when they died, he buried them. He'd been there 16 years when he spilled hot water out of the fire on his foot and realized it didn't hurt. And he knew he'd now contracted leprosy. And he said, you know, even if I could leave the island to be healed, I wouldn't do that because I'm here. You see, he stopped calling them my brothers. He started calling them my fellow lepers. And he worked with him till he died. Right before he died, 2 priests and 2 nuns came to visit him, prepare for his own burial. And one of the priests said, when you get to heaven, will you pass me your mantle? Like Elijah passed his to Elisha. And Joseph Damien said, what would you want with my mantle? It's filled with leprosy. Now you know those lepers could trust Joseph Damien with their leprosy. He lived with them. He died for them. Who do you trust with yours? See, the story here is really simple. It's the Lord Jesus Christ. He alone's the one who's filled with compassion. He even became a leper for us. Do you realize that in the Bible, leprosy is always the primary picture of sin? That when they want to symbolize sin, leprosy is the picture of sin. Because leprosy, what it does to the physical body, the debilitating, destructive torment that it brings is what sin does to everyone. We're all lepers. We're all sinners as well. And you and I can trust the Lord Jesus Christ. See, he's got his hands out. He even says now, you know, if you're willing, I can make you clean. Now I want you to imagine with me for a moment a woman who's been ostracized, who's been left aside, who's been pushed aside, who's been rejected, who's been mocked, who's been made fun of. I want you to imagine a woman who's looked for love, but the kind of love she received was not the kind of love she really needed. You know, Jesus touched a lot of lepers, didn't he? He touched lepers. He healed blind eyes. He restored souls. He brought salvation. He talked to women at the well. Asked for drinks. Brought them life. So imagine a woman who's been rejected and scorned. And Jesus looks through the externals to the internals. And Jesus reaches out and brings forgiveness and grace and life. Because he's the one who's filled with compassion.
Hello.
Hi. Looking for some company?
Actually, I was looking for you. Are you waiting for a bus?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Depends on you. Nice guy like you might make a girl like me change my plans.
Excuse me?
Oh, come on. You know what I mean. Wait a minute. You ain't a cop, are you? Because if you are, this is entrapment, you know.
No, I'm not with the police.
You're lying.
I don't lie.
Oh, really? Me either.
If you knew me, you'd know that.
Well, I don't really care to know you. But if it's the other way around, it's $200.
$200.
Okay. $150, but no weird stuff.
No weird stuff? You give yourself away every night to people you don't even know. And that's not weird stuff?
Hey, look, you're not getting anything for free.
Look, I tell you what, let's just start over. Okay?
No, I'll tell you what. I've been working all night, and I was just now heading home. And I don't feel like making small talk with some John who can't make up his mind, so why don't you just leave me alone, and we'll both be happy. What?
You're tired. And you get so little for what you give away.
I don't give anything away. I work hard for what I get.
And what do you get?
Hey, look. I got guys lined up from here to the moon who want to be with me. I don't need you.
You know, I think you do.
What's your problem?
Can I have a drink of your Pepsi?
What?
I'm thirsty.
Hey, they got coffee right over there.
Hey, the joy of cola, right?
It's a Coke.
Whatever.
You know, my horoscope warned me that I'd meet a weird one today. But I thought it was a guy on 3rd Street. Aren't you afraid of my germs?
No.
Didn't your mother ever tell you that you're not supposed to drink from a stranger's bottle? Especially someone like me? But hey, if it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to me.
Thanks.
I doubt you got anything I should be afraid of. Yeah, most people think I got AIDS. Like I'm some kind of leper or something.
I've met a few lepers. It's pretty awful.
You a doctor?
Sort of. Actually, I think you have been wanting to talk to me. Thanks.
I've been wanting to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
I've been wanting to talk to you.
Yes.
Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer. Hey, everybody. I got Val Kilmer here.
No, the other person you've been wanting to talk to. The one whose name you've mentioned a lot lately. I'm Jesus.
Jesus.
Of Nazareth.
And I thought you were dead.
Well, here I am.
Oh, boy. Why do I always attract the weirdos? You know, I don't even believe in God.
That's true. You don't. But you want to. You've been calling out to me ever since you were a little girl.
You're a very strange man. But hey, if you're Jesus, do a miracle.
I'm here, aren't I?
Oh, come on. I want to see some magic.
And I want you to know me, not just be impressed by me. All right. Look, remember a few weeks ago when that guy roughed you up?
Which one?
The one who made you give up your little girl.
What?
Do you remember? You called out to me then, didn't you? God, help me. Isn't that what you said?
You're freaking me out. You know, I'm not a very religious person, so I think that your kind of people are down the street at the church.
My kind of people.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not asking you to be religious. I'm asking you to trust me.
Yeah, well, I don't trust anyone.
You trust your horoscope.
You know, I maybe wanted something from God a long time ago. But I learned early on that you don't just keep asking for things from someone who ignores you.
I didn't ignore you.
Oh, yeah.
I've been right here the whole time.
Oh, is that right? You know, when I think of God, I think God is sort of like Eddie, my pimp. He comes by every day to collect what I owe him. He's got his eye on me. And if I ever stiffed him for one of my tricks, he would teach me a lesson. He makes sure I'm out there on the streets making money. And if I ever get into trouble, if he's not too busy, he might even help me out. But if I mess up just once, that's what I think of God. He's like my pimp.
I'm not like that.
Oh, go away.
Look, I want to help.
Yeah, I know what you want. Whatever the other man wants, go away.
I've seen every single one of your tears.
Yeah.
Tammy. Tammy,
How do you know my name?
I know your name.
Yeah. Well, I'm Valerie now. Tammy doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, she does. I know that she does. And I'm sorry for all of your pain. And I know that you don't believe this right now, but I can help.
Yeah, well, I'll give you a call.
I'll be here, waiting. Well, thanks for the Coke. Next time, I'll return the favor.
Next time.
Yeah. You and me, we've got more to talk about.
Oh, really?
But in the meantime, I want you to remember just one thing.
Yeah. What's that, Jesus?
I love you.
Foolish heart, looks like we're here again. Same old game of plastic smile. Don't let anybody